You know that feeling when you've been doing something or really nothing all day, scrolling, watching videos, whatever, and then suddenly you have a hard task to do and it's like your brain just refuses to cooperate? Like you sit down and you know you need to start, but somehow starting feels like the hardest thing that you could ever do. I mean, I used to think that was just me being lazy or my willpower was just not there, but now I kind of get it. There's honestly physiological, cognitive reason as to why this switch feels honestly like impossible at first. And the thing is, before your brain even gives you those coping thoughts, the excuses, the rationalizations, there's a more primal initial layer happening. Your brain literally has to flip a sort of switch. It has to transition from a dopamine rotting state, the low effort, low friction zone of scrolling, eating snacks, binging, and just numbing out, into the high leverage, intensive, high focus state required for real work. That's the invisible friction that almost no one actually talks about. And honestly, it's why it takes me that much extra time to lock in after doing nothing all day. Your brain has been evolving in a low energy mode. You're basically coasting. Maybe your dopamine system is ticking at some baseline level from quick hit habits, right? TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, and it's comfortable there. That comfort, though, is deceptive. And then when you try to do something that requires real effort, your brain doesn't just say, cool, let's do this. It says no. It's like there's an actual metabolic and cognitive cost to switching gears, so and so, like task switching. And this is where the spiral ruts begin to come in, the snowball effect of complacency. If your brain is constantly in low effort dopamine loops, the more you stay there, the harder it gets to switch out of it. Then when you finally do try to do some work, that switch is enormous and you get frustrated, angry with yourself, even depressed or anxious because it feels like you're incapable of even starting. But you're not. It's just that the switch is very, very heavy. The key is to recognize that there is a friction before the friction even comes about. Most people only talk about the friction of actually doing the work, right? The effort, the discipline, the concentration of the actual task itself. But that's not the first wall you hit. The first wall is your brain's resistance to leaving the easy dopamine-rich state that it's comfortable in. And bro, once you realize that, everything will change. You start to see that procrastination isn't just moral failure, but more cognitive physics. Your brain has inertia like everything else, and inertia isn't personal, it's natural. So how do you overcome this? Honestly, the most underrated trick that I've been using is to literally accept that you're going to be a little slow to start. Do not expect instant focus, expect friction. Expect your mind to resist, and then don't fight it with willpower, fight it with strategy. Be strategic, Small steps, micro tasks. The first 5 minutes are the hardest. I actually talk about this a lot in my other videos. That's where you prime the switch, so-and-so. Something as simple as opening your document, turning on music, or writing one sentence can signal to your brain, okay, we're transitioning now, we're getting into a flow. And from there, focus will begin to flow. And here's another thing that blew my mind when I realized this. The friction is literal energy. High leverage work consumes a lot of cognitive bandwidth. We know this. Your brain has been conserving energy during the dopamine rut. That's why most people get very irritable, tired, or anxious right when they start. That's not you being weak. It's that your brain is literally ramping up for the workload that it wasn't really expecting. And well, if you fail to recognize that, you compound frustration. Right? You start to think, why can't I just start? And when really, your brain is just doing what it evolved to do, which is resist unnecessary energy expenditure. Here's where it really gets interesting though. The switch is actually trainable. The more you practice the transition, the easier it actually becomes. If you cultivate micro habits that make the bridge from dopamine comfort to high focus work shorter, that initial wall will become smaller. And that's why routines matter. That's why starting the day with small, meaningful tasks, things that prime your brain for effort, will make a huge difference. You're literally lowering the activation energy for your brain to go from idleness to intensity. It's simple biology. And bro, once you start seeing this, you can actually stop beating yourself up for procrastinating because you realize the initial frustration isn't a flaw with yourself. It's like literal physics. It's neurochemistry. And once you accept it, you can start experimenting with real hacks. Even just like moving your body around for 30 seconds before work, all of these are perfect for priming yourself for effort. So the truth that I want you to take away from this is starting is always the hardest part. We know this, and not because you're weak, lazy, or unmotivated, but it's because your brain is just resisting that switch from low-value dopamine to high-value work. And until you recognize that, no amount of self-talk or hustle culture pep will fix it. Once you see it though, everything will change. You will start to treat procrastination not as a moral failing, but as a natural friction that can be overcome with the right strategy. And once you can consistently make that initial switch, the rest of it will come naturally. The real flow, the high leverage work, the momentum, it's all there. And the moment that you internalize this, your productivity will become a literal system. It's just physics. It's as simple as that.